Where'd you go to college, eh?
I went to Virginia Tech.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the Zwiebels?
Yeah, Z.
Oh,
Z.
that's even bigger.
Yeah?
Yeah, because the Rebbetzin was my student, 20 something, I don't know. Honey Barber.
Honey was?
Honey Barber.
Wow.
She was Honey Barber. And those 21 or 2 years ago,
Wow.
probably. She's 40.
At this point, she might be.
Yeah, something like that, right?
I guess I was there a long time ago. She wasn't that much. She went.
You were there a while back. She's amazing. I know him a little bit. She's an amazing kid. Very special girl.
Mm-hmm.
Her sister came next year, maybe the year after. I don't know. Within 2 years, they were their sisters. Okay. Yesterday we learned clearly about the three-step process of bringing about a greater and greater revelation down here in Elam Hazeh, but ultimately the source of it all is the same place. The source of it all is Etzem, the essence of a Kodesh Boruch, the essence of our neshama, right? Which ultimately then triggers Havaya Deleiva, the highest level. Okay. So, I think we got to the end of the first paragraph in Vav, right? We got all the way to the end of that paragraph, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. The last thing we saw, let's just see the last thing we saw because we did it very, very, very quickly. All right, so the war is a war. And what's a war? A war is, and I'll put it in the terms of the mimer. There's an asinus makam of a menagid. There's opposition, very clear opposition. The miracle of finding the Pach Shemen, so that was a miracle that was shaykh to Yehuda Ilah, a higher level, less connected to the world, still connected to the world, but obviously a transcendent connection. And that was the revelation of a taste of the idea of no opposition. Meaning, what did the Pach Shemen represent? The Pach Shemen shechasam b'chais m'shokein gadol, a level of reality that the Greek can't see. Right? A revelation of a level of elokus that's beyond anything the Greek can imagine. So on that level, there's no opposition, right? So in that sense, it's a it's giving us a taste of the highest level where there's absolutely no opposition. All there is elokus, all there is godliness. But it's a level where there's still a reality of the world. They still had to find it. Right? They found something in Elam Hazeh that helped them do what it is that they had to do. There was no battle involved. Interesting enough, there's really no Mesiras Nefesh involved, per se. So, the Mesiras Nefesh was done, so to speak. The Mesiras Nefesh was expressed most powerfully in the war. But as a result of that, the victory of the war brought about the revelation of an even higher level of elokus. And that results in the highest level, and that's the last two lines of Vav, which we read very quickly yesterday. And after the second level is revealed, Nimshach ha'or ba'ifenai l'yosef. The light is revealed in an even higher way. Sheidlika mimenu shmeina yomim, that it was lit for 8 days. The nes zeh eina maluvish b'teva. This miracle is not clothed in nature in any way, shape, or form. Gilui havaya de la'ela, a revelation of the third level, havaya de la'ela. Kameshu l'mayla mislavshus, as it is completely and totally beyond the natural order. And beyond being expressed within the natural order. It's an obliteration of the natural order. Finding the Pach Shemen, the pneumius of it is it's coming from a place higher. Therefore, it's that level of reality that the Greek can't see, so to speak. But it's expressed within the context of some worldly reality to the extent that we found the Pach Shemen in a place in the Beis Hamikdash. Okay. V'yesh lo hisif. Now, we still haven't got to Zion. The Rebbe is going to start answering our first question, which was why Chav Hei and not Chav Daled and not Chav Vav. Okay? V'yesh lo hosif. The second paragraph in Vav. That the fact that also the miracles of the victory in the war, umetzias pak hashemen, and finding the flask of oil, ultimately this is what we've been saying throughout the last couple of classes, the last couple of chapters in the Maimon. The Rebbe has been explaining that the source of it all is the Mesiris Nefesh that's coming from Yechidah Shebenefesh. So that's a revelation of the highest level, Havaya Delayla, the third level. And we had the question, so then why are we talking about two other levels, Yehuda Tata, Yehudi Law? It's all the third level. And we said because the expression of the Mesiris Nefesh was in the battle, first in Chav Daled, and then in the context of finding the oil in Chav Hey. And only on the third day was there the clear expression of something completely and totally beyond the natural order. That's what we just finished in the first paragraph of the Vav. So we said that also these miracles are from the highest level, Shalamayla Mishtalshlus, which is beyond the natural order. Elo, Bat, and again, this is just a review of what we said in Hey and Vav. Elo Shenislavshu, but they were clothed. What a garment is a means of expression. That means they were expressed. But Dargis Tishtashla, as we're learning in Tanya now, the three garments of the soul, thought, speech, and action, the three ways in which the soul expresses itself. But they were clothed and expressed in levels of Ishtashlas, levels of natural reality. First Yehudi Tata, the war, and Yehudi Law, finding the Pach Shemen. Hu Be'ikr. Now, all of this is essentially Mibnei Shehem Hayu, and now the Rebbe says a Chiddush that we haven't seen yet, and this is a fascinating idea, that based on what we've been seeing, it's not in any way, shape, or form something that we can't understand. Shema Yuchachona, those two levels were a preparation for the third level. What's the third level? The level of Havaya Delayla. Lahanes Daspakas Hashem and Lashmeina Yami. Nes, a miracle. The nes of Haspakas Hashem and Lashmeina Yami, the oil lasting 8 days. A nes, this miracle, Sheina Maluvish, but that was not clothed in nature in any way, shape, or form. And that's out of the first two levels are preparation for the third, that we're climbing the ladder of revelation in order to ultimately reveal what was going on in Chav Daled, because really what was Chav Daled? A revelation of this state, of the state of Yechidah Shebenefesh. But it was clothed in the battle. The second step, that completely transcendent level, was clothed in finding the Pach Shemen. And the third day, there was a revelation of what was really going on. Now, why don't we celebrate the third day? Now that we even have a greater question, so we should celebrate the third day. That's really the Iker. It's all about what was revealed on the third day, meaning the second day of Hanukkah, the third day of our Chav Daled, Chav Hey, Chav Vav sequence. Okay. The Nisim Elu, the first two, Mitzad Atzmam, in terms of themselves, in terms of how they express themselves in the world, Haim, they are the Iker, Hainyanim B'Yichud Tata Yichudi Law. These were miracles that were clothed within the context of first seeing how godliness can work within the world, and then how godliness can be transcendent of the world. But there's still a world that it's transcendent of, which is Yichudi Law, right? Two different levels, Yichudi Tata, Yichudi Law, which we should definitely feel at home by now and understanding that. And if we don't, so we should say it over to ourselves 20 times. Yichudi Tata, there is a world, there is a me, but that's all about serving God. Yichudi Law, the world is godly. Havaya Delayla, there's no world, there's nothing else, there's just Hashem. Three different levels of the unity of Hashem, three different levels of understanding reality. Right? The first two levels within the context of some relative existence of something other than a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And the third is no, absolute existence. What is that? Elokus. There's nothing else. There isn't anything else. It's not that there's something that is a place for him. It's just all him. There's nothing else. Everything is completely and totally bottled. It doesn't even have a metzias, because we said there were two different levels of bittul. Bittul a yesh. There is a yesh. There is a reality that was created that seems to be separate, but it's really bottled. What does that mean? It's not separate. It's really there to be the place where you can serve God. And the vehicle for the service of God, because we use the physical reality to serve God. Okay. Yehudi Law, bittul b'metzias. There's a metzias, there's an existence of the world, but it's an existence of bittul. It's godly. Right? Yeah? That's a subtle one. That's called bittul b'metzias. Think of a tzaddik. You and I, we're struggling to reach the state of bittul hayesh. Tzaddik is on the level of bittul b'metzias. There's a metzias, but it's a metzias of bittul. It's a godly metzias. Doesn't mean he's God, it's not the Eibishter. He's a created thing. Okay, we say he has a metzias, he has a reality. But what's his reality? Godliness. It's not that he has a separate reality that he uses to serve God. His reality is godly. What does Chazal say about Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Ish Elokim. Right? What does Chazal say? I'm not making it up. Not some crazy chassid, right? With the wild look in his eyes. Chazal, the ultimate revealers of truth. What do they say? When Moshe is referred to as Ish Elokim, a godly person. So they say from half down Ish, from half up Elokim. It's godly. It's a person who reveals godly reality in his very being. Oh, okay, so it's not that he's a separate being who happens to be very connected to God. No, he's expressing godliness. He's not the Eibishter. He's Moshe Rabbeinu. But he's godly, like the world. There's a world. What is it? It's Elokus. It's all the Eibishter.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
where's Yehudi La Yehudi in here? Where are we exactly now?
Last word on the second line, first word on the third line in the little paragraph Yesh Hosef.
Can I clarify?
Acronyms. Not
Yeah.
Clarify the timeline real quick. So the 24th was the end of the war, or just the one
End
day
of the war. No, the war took a while. End
Yeah.
of the war. It didn't seem, I don't know how long it took a while.
The
End of the war.
24th was the last day of the war. 25th they found about Shannon, or in 26th.
So the 26th, I mean,
Was the
what
second.
happened, an obvious expression of the notion of the oil not disappearing, right? Is that how that works? Okay, we're not going into that.
Yeah, they lit the 25th, and then they woke up on the 26th, and they saw it was still burning and it hadn't gone down.
Well, either it's still burning, or it went out, but it's still there, or all of a sudden I mean, this is a position that the Rebbe negates, but it's a position out there in Torah land, right? That it just it actually filled up the next day. Whatever happened, the 26th they were, whoa, this is wild. This oil's still around.
Right, so they lit the 25th, and then the 26th. In some way, it's okay.
Therefore that's the clearest revelation of the miracle that's completely and totally an obliteration of nature. Finding the Pach Shemin isn't an obliteration of nature. Sometimes you find things, right? You know, you lose something, you find it, happens, right?
And Rabbi, where's Hawaii again?
I'm sorry?
Hawaii again?
Hawaii, where is it?
Yeah. In this paragraph is there? The affirmation.
Not that I've read yet, I don't think. Is that? Nope, don't think so. Okay. Pseudon. So the middle line, Nisim, the fourth line. Nisim eila mitzad atzmam, they themselves, heim be'ikar inyanim yichudat tatah yichudi law. Again, end of the fourth line, same thing. Yichudat tatah yichudi law. We know what that means. We have to know what that means. Right? And you should find someone today, I'll give you homework. Find someone who's not in the class and say, I have homework, can I bother you for about 40 seconds? And he'll say, yes, because he's a Mayanot student. And you'll say, I have to explain Yehuda Tata and Yehuda Ilah to someone who's not in the Chassidus class. Can I do that to you? Say them, we all have homework.
Does it have to be a Mayanot student? Can we call
No,
someone?
it can be, you can call up someone, call up your best friend in Bangladesh. But they listen, but you never know, it's never the same on YouTube as it is in real life.
Yeah, it's true.
Right, that's our surprises at the end of the shir that we had in the afternoon. So someone asked me to say part of what I said on YouTube. So I understand. You just heard it in real life, like why you have to hear it on YouTube? What's YouTube got that real life doesn't have? I don't understand. Real life is actually an advantage over YouTube, isn't it? I think.
Actually, YouTube you can replay.
You can replay. I get that.
That's
Okay,
helpful.
yeah, but it's still, it's funny, right? Will you marry me? Oh, can you say that on YouTube for me? Please,
She wants to hear it.
I want to hear it again.
More of a WhatsApp.
Hmm?
More of a WhatsApp.
WhatsApp, will you marry me? I'm sure it's happened. Va'al yedei she'neis nitzochan milchama, to such an extent that the nace of the victory in the war, fifth line, hayasiba, it was the reason la neis de mitzias bach Hashem. So certainly it's connected to a level, and we're going to see in the next paragraph that ultimately the cause of something is higher than the effect. By definition, because the effect only exists by virtue of the fact that the cause causes it to exist. Right? So it's the reason la neis de mitzias bach Hashem and kanal b'tchilas ha'maimer, as we said earlier in the beginning of the maimer. Hine la acharei shenase bei, after it was brought about in it, done literally, nase, done in it, in what? Bapach shematzu, in the flask that they found. Nes, another miracle. And what was that? V'idliku mimena shmena yomim, it was lit for 8 days. Okay, so they fought the war, then they found the shemen, and then in that flask that they found, that flask itself was the source of a third miracle. So this drew down this revelation of the completely transcendent state, which is beyond the natural order, gam also into the nace of Metzias Pach Hashemen, first into that which happened the day before, and the Rebbe is going to say something quite astounding in footnote 42, which we'll see, right? And also b'neis the nitzochan ha'melchama, meaning it brought about a revelation of the fact that also was an expression of the highest level of godly reality. When it happened, what was being revealed, what was actually happening, a milchama. What was happening? Yehuda Tata. But what was the source of the Yehuda Tata? Yechidah shebenefesh. Right? And therefore the response above, corresponding to that level of godly reality in the soul, so that level of godly reality in the Eibishter himself. Okay, so to Pach Hashem. And what brought that all into focus? The third miracle. So the third miracle was a clear, unadulterated expression of Havaya de La'ela, a level completely transcendent of anything that nature has to say. An obliteration of nature. Right? Not something happening beyond nature, but in nature. Right? Beyond that. Something akin to most of the makkos in Mitzrayim was that. It was an obliteration of nature. Right? And even when there were hailstones, okay, there's hailstones. These hailstones were huge hailstones. Okay, there's huge hailstones. Go to, Oklahoma. Right? These hailstones had fire in them. Okay, it's a complete and total obliteration of the natural reality. Okay. Much of the makkos. Okay. So we've answered our question. We had a parenthetical question in the middle of the mimer. Right? And that question was, having explained everything we've explained, right, in terms of understanding our first question. And our first question was, why aren't we celebrating Hanukkah on Chav Dalet? Didn't this incredibly important event happen on Chav Dalet, and that's the Milchama, and that represents a certain aspect in R Veda, and that represents a certain aspect of the unity of Hashem, and with all those 6 things that relate to that, right? Okay, Milchama being one of them. Okay, so why doesn't it begin there? Well, that was our original question. Or at least Chav Vav, there should be some mention of the special nature of Chav Vav, because it's the revelation of this third level of Achdus. That was our basic question in the Maimer. In the context of that, the Rebbe said, having explained what we just explained, there are these 3 different levels revealed in Hanukkah, I don't get it. Hanukkah is really a revelation of Yechidah shebenefesh. Hanukkah is all about Mesiras Nefesh. Everything you'll ever learn in Chassidus about Hanukkah is Mesiras Nefesh, which means the third level. Right? So sacrifice coming from the highest level of the soul. Yechida shebenefesh, which corresponds to Havaya de La'ela, that third level there. So then what are we talking about? Yehuda Tata, Yehuda Ilah, it's all much higher than that. And we just finished explaining that. That yes, the source of it all is Yechida shebenefesh, the essence of the soul. That doesn't come into a state of revelation until the third miracle, because that level of our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore the response of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from the same level, so to speak, in his reality, that completely transcendent reality, the first response was clothed completely in nature. We won a war, but there was a war and there was an opposition, and a serious opposition. The second expression of that was transcendent of nature, but still in nature to the extent that a miracle happened that we found the Pach Shemen, but there's still a Pach Shemen, there's still a world, there's still finding something, right? And then the third level of that is when there's a complete and total revelation of the transcendent, which is the 8 days. That's Hanukkah. Okay, so now we have to answer our first question. Why isn't it Chav Daled? Why is it Chav Hey? Okay? Especially now, right? When Chav Daled is the same as Chav Vav. Ultimately, right? Zion, v'zeu shekavu, and that which they established. Hascholas Yemei Chanukah, the beginning of the days of Chanukah, b'chav Hei Kislev, on the 25th of Kislev. Shabei haya neis haneres, that in that day was the miracle of the neres, meaning finding the Pach. It's interesting, the Rebbe says it that way. This day we found the Pach, right? Meaning the dagesh is on the nerot and not on the milchama, like the Gemara, and not like Alanisim, right? Ki hashlemus shel neis de nitzachon milchama, the completion, the wholeness of the miracle of the victory of the war, shahaya b'chav daled b'kislev, which we said earlier was on chav daled b'kislev, and what's that? That's Yehuda Tata. It's the 24 letters of Baruch Shem, which is Yehuda Tata, who, we're going to come back to footnote 37 in a second. Right? Shemegalim by, that we reveal the completion of that, the wholeness of that miracle of Chav Daled, Shemegalim by al yedei nes shemen, and that was revealed through the nes of the shemen. Chav Daled, last page.
I don't have.
You don't have a last page? Come on, bro.
I don't.
Is everybody telling me that?
I have a last page.
Everybody else has a last page? How do you not have a last page? I didn't say it's your fault. What did you do, Moshe? Your dog ate the last page. I wondered if it's like it fell off. Yeah, I wonder if no, it's not, but that's my memory.
I agree with her.
That's so bizarre.
I've been looking this whole time and I've been like, wow, that doesn't make sense that it ends here. And then you kept going and I was like, oh,
So
okay.
give me 30 seconds. I'll just go
Okay,
to
thank
the
you.
last page with a new coffee stain.
Yay!
Did you ever sleep last night?
Slept a little more. Yeah, I went to bed.
Oh, that was you.
Like, something. Huh?
What were you guys doing?
I went to bed at 9:45 last night. I felt good.
Oh, that's good.
What time did you get up?
6.
Yes, sir. Wait, what? Did we have something after we came back?
We came back from
The mitzvah.
we went to the first. Yeah.
Where did you guys get back?
You went to 2 different bases.
So what time did you guys get back?
No, back a little before 10 or just at 10.
Oh, that's good. I mean, was there any for branding or something?
Oh, this Italian
Ah.
all.
You went there?
This Italians all apparently every year have a tradition of getting together during Hanukkah, and that's what last night was.
You went there?
No, I didn't go, but I said to room message.
Take this picture.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Just leave that money in the staple. Okay. Al Yedei Neitz Hashemen Shehu Neitz Nitzachon Melchama. What did the Neitz Hashemen reveal? That the Neitz Nitzachon Melchama, that the Neitz of the victory of the battle, Shorsha, its source, Hu L'mayla Mishtavshnos, is beyond the natural order. Right? Okay. So Chaf Hey reveals in Chaf Daled what Chaf Daled's really all about. Okay, but I still understand, so why aren't I celebrating Chaf Daled? Because Chaf Daled is really about this transcendent state. So the expression of Chaf Daled is definitely in Gashmias, in a Milchama, Yehuda Tata, there's no question. But ultimately, what is the 25th reveal? That the true reality of the war is it's also completely beyond nature. V'av sheyesh ma'ila. And even though, I'm sorry, wait, let's look quickly at footnote 37, which we left behind. 37 on the previous page. Okay?
Yeah.
Where the Rebbe talks about the shlemus of the Neitz of Nitzachon and Melchama. The Rebbe quotes the Veata Rebbe. Ba'maimer, see at the bottom of page Kuf Gimel. Ba'maimer, the Shnas Chatzrat, right? Tav Reish Tzadi Ches. Okay, now if you read that, it means Tirtzach, you will murder. So that's why the Rebbe switched the letters around. Okay. V'kavu hanes, they established the Nes Bad Lokas Naders on lighting the candles, v'loy b'nes de Nitzachon Melchama, and not on the Nes of the victory in the war. Aval mizeshem bevar sham, that which the Veata Rebbe explains there. Shatam al zeh, the reason for that hu ki ikar kavana, the essential intention asher b'yehuda tata, in experiencing and being sensitive to the godliness within the reality of the world, and that our existence in the world is all about serving God. Ultimately, what's that about? What are we really trying to get to? Yeh or v'gilu d'yichudi ilah will be the revelation of all is God. Right? Meaning, yes, our essential avodah is Yehuda Tata, and we're going to see this again in the Maimer, and this is just the Chlal all over Chassidus about these two different levels of meaning. Ultimately, we have a mitzvah deraisa. What's the mitzvah deraisa that we have every day, twice a day? Shema. And what level is Shema? Yehudi law, right? That's pretty interesting, isn't it? The mitzvah of Shema Yisrael is Yehudi law. Our everyday avodah, we keep saying, is Yehuda Tata, which is true. It's not true. And it's so intuitive. Once you hear it explained, it's so obvious that that's where we are. That we're down there in a world where we feel very powerfully the existence of the world. And when our socks get wet in the rain, it's not like we're transcendent of that. We really feel that, and it's icky all day long, right? It didn't happen to me yesterday, but I was very happy, right? So that world is very real to us, and yet we're struggling, and I think for most of it, it's not a struggle in a negative way that it's horrible and terrible. Hopefully it's a struggle that we do with unbelievable simcha. But to serve God in the context of the world is a struggle. It's not something that comes as easily as eating chocolate pudding. Chocolate pudding isn't an avodah. Chocolate pudding, if they put it in front of you, you make a bracha, hopefully. And even if they got the bracha, they're like, oh, well, I made a bracha, that's why I'm eating it. Yeah, right, that's why you made them. That's why you're eating the chocolate pudding, so you can make a bracha. The Karliner Chassidim yell when they daven. If you've ever been in Karlin, they scream, mamish scream. They're from Russia, so they're not Burich, they're Baruch like we are, right? But they're not Polish or Hungarian. But they scream. They scream at Baruch Aton! They make a lot of noise. So it all comes from Aaron Agadol of Karlin. Rav Aaron Agadol was a contemporary of the Alter Rebbe. He was a very, 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 very holy Jew, and he had his Chassidim scream. So there's a story they tell. I wasn't there. This was in the generation of Aaron Agadol of Karlin. I was very young. My parents wouldn't let me out of the house in those days. All right, so he was sitting in his house. And one of the Chassidim walked by, probably with a sore throat, having just finished Shachris, screaming the whole Shachris. He walked by and he saw Rav Aaron through the window of his house. And Rav Aaron took a fruit and made a very quiet bracha and put it in his mouth and ate it. So he's standing outside. What's that about? I don't understand. That was a quiet bracha. The Rebbe just made a quiet bracha. Why is the Rebbe? So he's standing there, looking perplexed. So Varn saw him. Varn came to the front door of the house and said, you're wondering why I made a quiet bracha and I make you make loud brachas? Yeah, there was. He said, I'll tell you the difference. I eat to make a bracha. You make a bracha to eat. So you have to make yours loud. I don't have to make mine loud. The only reason I eat is so I can make a bracha. There's a difference between those two states of reality. By Aaron Agadolika was the bracha. He doesn't have to scream like that. Maybe he'd have to chew loud so he'll remember there's food. I don't know. That I'm not sure about. Right, okay, so there's two different states of reality. Now we're down there where we're making a bracha to eat. We're not eating to make a bracha. Right, okay, so I make the bracha, I mumble it, I say it, who knows, whether I get that last syllable out before the chocolate pudding's in my mouth is not clear. Okay, but we are making a bracha, and we are down there realizing that we have to serve God down there in the world of chocolate pudding, and that's not always easy. It doesn't mean it's not a blast. It's a blast, but it's not easy. I would imagine that most people who work hard enjoy their work, right? But that doesn't mean that they're not working hard, right? Okay. I always quote Irma Bombeck because I thought she was like an interesting lady. Irma Bombeck. Is she alive? She must have passed away, right? Long time ago. Yeah, she was a very interesting lady. She had a really interesting take on things. She was more a social commentator than a political commentator. Yes. I think that's the reasonable way to describe her, right? Very interesting woman. Just an interesting take on America and things. And she wrote for the Washington Post, New York Times, both. Well, I don't know.
I think it was syndicated.
Oh yeah, syndicated. One of those. Right? You're using an old-time word. Right? A syndicated columnist, right? So she would write her things, and newspapers, I guess, would pick it up, right? So I remember reading an article of hers. It was the greatest. One line, I don't remember one line. I don't have a clue what the whole rest of the article was about. But she said that she'll start jogging as soon as she sees one jogger with a smile on their face. Joggers always look so serious, like they're in such pain. I'm a serious person. Just have a good time. Jog, enjoy it, smile. It's beautiful outside. The birds are chirping. Enjoy yourself. No. So I don't think she ever jogged. Maybe that's why she passed away. Who knows if she had jogged, she might still be with us. She'd be 132 in great shape. Right? She was that old? I don't know. She didn't sound that old. I mean, in those days also you didn't have a picture of them. I don't know what she looked like. Just remember, but she just was an interesting person. She had a very interesting take on things. Right? So, okay, that was her line about jogging. I thought that was a great line. Right? Some people daven that way. They look like they're in pain. You're talking to God. This is an interesting thing to do. Now it's very hard. I get it. It's very hard. But you don't have to go through life with a furrowed brow all the time. Just think you're getting to talk to God. This is a cool thing. I'm not doing a very good job at it. I get that. Okay, and I might have to concentrate harder, but this look of pain. It's not painful. But it's very challenging, Yehuda Tata, and it's very difficult. There's no question about that. Okay, and that's our basic reality. But, interesting enough, what's that all about, really? Is to open us up to Yehudi law so we can say Shema Yisrael. And we should say Shema Yisrael, we should mean it. Meaning that there should be a moment in our day where we can actually contemplate the fact that Hashem Echad ve'ein sheni. There's no me, it's all just Him. Mm-hmm. Now that's still only Hashem Echad, it's not Hashem Yachid, even though we said that in Hashem Elokeinu according to the Rebbe, right? In this Maimon. This Maimon, you should know, is a big Hiddush in that because generally, and when the Rebbe describes two Shemas Hashem in one pasuk, so the second is usually higher than the first. That's not always the case, but that's usually the case, the Rebbe says. Even though I don't think that's the case in Hashem Kel Racham B'chana either. But anyway. So Yehuda Tata is ultimately about opening us up to the possibility and the appreciation of Yehuda Ilah, and it's reasonable to say now, as opposed to any other time, the famous kuntras of the Rebbe Rashab called Kuntras Eitz Chaim, which all of you should make it your business to learn at some point, right? It is translated into English, but whether you have to learn it before you can learn things in Lashon HaKodesh without an English translation, I'm not sure. It's it's not easy. It's one of the contrasting. The Rebbe Rashab was away from Lubavitch a lot for health reasons. He would go to spas in the mountains and different places. There's actually a place in Czechia. I think it's in Czechia. It might be in Slovakia. I'm not sure, but it's close to Prague, so it's probably Czechia. There's a Lubavitch Sem in Czechia, and they go every year one Shabbos to a spa in the mountains there where the Rebbe Rashab was for some time. That they go there, and it's like an interesting place to spend Shabbos. The Rebbe Rashab spent Shabbos here. So he was not healthy physically. His body always gave him issues, and so he went away to the spas and he wrote 4 contrasim, just like a pamphlet, but it's bigger than pamphlets. It's 60, 70 pages long. He wrote 4 Kuntras Mayan, which is about dealing with your Yetzer Hara, Kuntras Atfila and Kuntras Avoda, which are both about davening and hisbeinenus, contemplation and meditation, and Kuntras Eitz Chaim. And Kuntras Eitz Chaim is about the tree of life, which is Panimi Satara, as opposed to the Eitz Hadas Tevurah, the tree of knowledge, good and evil, which is Nigla. Right? What's Gemara about? Good and evil. What's good? What's evil? Chassidus, no evil, there's just good. It's all elokus. So that's Eitz Chaim. So actually we have to, the Eibishter sent us out of Gan Eden. Why? Because he didn't want us to taste from the Eitz Chaim, because if we had tasted from the Eitz Chaim, we wouldn't have been affected by the Eitz Hadas. So how is it that you make sure that your learning of Nigla is proper? You also have to learn Eitz Chaim. You also have to learn Chassidus. Right, this is what the Rebbe explains in the Maimer, and explains why it is that he just opened the yeshiva that has a chiddush that learning Chassidus is actually part of the Seder of yeshiva. Until Temchet Tamimim was opened, 128 years ago, 127 years ago. So it was in Elul. So 127 years and a few months ago, there was no, even by the other Rebbeim, the yeshivas didn't have Chassidus as part of the Seder of Yeshiva. Chassidus was what Bachrim learned when they had time. They could find time to learn it in their own spare time. The Rebbe Rashab was mechadish the fact that Chassidus has to be part of the Seder, and he explains that in Kuntras Eitz Chaim, why that's necessary. And at the end, it's really fascinating. He explains what the Seder of the day should be. 7:30 to 9:30 Chassidus. 12, then they daven Shachris, 12 o'clock Nigla, meaning that they would daven Shachris and then go for the tag. They'd go to someone's house and eat their, basically one of their 2 meals of the day, basically their only serious meal of the day, right? They'd go eat. Then 12 o'clock to 8 o'clock was Nigla, was Gemara. If they had to daven Mincha in the middle, which half a year they did, so then they would daven Mincha in the middle, but if not, so they would just learn. How these are 16, 17, 18-year-olds, right? They would learn 12 to 8. Then there was an hour off, and then 2 hours of Chassidus, 9 to 11. And the Rebbe writes that if someone finds it too hard to stay up until 11, so 7 o'clock, actually, the Rebbe says 7 o'clock is tea and biscuits. Right? There was tea and biscuits at 7 o'clock. And then 7:30 was Chassidus till 9:30. Then they would daven and have a break and whatever. Then 12 to 8 was Nigla. 9 to 11 was more Chassidus. So it was 2, 8, 2. We now do 1.5, like 1.5 usually. In regular Lubavitch, it's an hour and a half, 6 and an hour and a half. Right? 6 hours of Nigla in the middle of the day, but there's usually mincha and lunch in the middle. But he writes, it's very interesting, he writes that if there's a student that has a hard time going to sleep at 11 and getting up in time, so then he can go to sleep at 10. But that means he doesn't get the hour off in between 8 and 9. That means he does his 2 hours of Chassidus 8 to 10, and then he goes to sleep. Right, so he can do that. And that was 5 days a week. Friday, Seder was until about 2.5, 3 hours before Shabbos. And they weren't allowed out of the yeshiva for any reason for the first 2 years they were there. They were there every single day for 2 years, and they didn't go home. Yom Tov, of course, so they Cholamite said it was different, right? But they would learn every single day, no days off, nothing, no tiulim, no tiulim. It was very, 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 very hard, very strenuous. When Rav Lezer Nanas told me that he was a bocher there, he got there in Taf Reish Ayin Gimel, Shavuos Taf Reish Ayin Gimel, 13. So he was there till 1915, and then he was allowed to go home and see his parents. At a certain point, he was close to the Rebbe. Just so hard. They were doing it, but it was just so hard. Now, I just add one thing in terms of how hard it was. So before we get the answer to when the Rebbe answered the question, how did Shabbos work? Just knew no word for he quoted every union from the Alter Rebbe that he quoted in a previous mimer from his father, and he had to know the whole. It's the Rebbe shop. The Rebbe shop's mimer long. The Rebbe would say the mimer Friday night, and they'd have to know it Sunday morning. So I asked Laser. I said, "Well, how did you guys do this?" He said, "Well, Friday night." So we usually go to sleep Friday night. Like we get a little bit of sleep. We'd stay up after the meal. We'd stay up in groups and we'd chazer the mimer together. Because the Rebbe just said the mimer, so it was fresh in our heads. So we'd go over it together in groups. And if you were good at it, you'd been there for a while, so you might get a few hours sleep Friday night. If not, so you moved up most of Friday night trying to do this. So then Shabbos mornings, Seder Chassidus, the Rebbe Shab would often walk around Zal while the Bochrim were chazering the mimer, and he'd help them. Say, no. What happened next? Right? The Rebbe Shab would be there walking around Zal like a mashpia. Right? And so then they would daven and they would eat. And summer Shabbosim, so obviously they had 14 hours to chazer the mimer in the afternoon. Winter, so they'd eat, and already Shabbos was out. Meitzi Shabbos, they could write it down, so they'd write it down to themselves, and then it'd be easy to memorize. He said, Meitzi Shabbos, the guys who were good could write it down, look at it, and they'd have it, and they could get a reasonable night's sleep. Meitzi Shabbos, if Shabbos out early in the winter. The guys who were new often slept very little Meitzi Shabbos also. Then every single day, 7:30 till 11 o'clock every day without fail. So this was pretty hard. So they asked, and I asked them what happened if someone didn't know Sunday morning. So he said, there's no such thing. You were under the table if you didn't know it. You were just, it was the ultimate thing. I mean, he didn't not know it. You couldn't not. He said if a buffer didn't know it, he was under the table. He'd just slink under the table and disappear. There was no such thing. Right? So they asked the Rebbe Shab, why is it so hard? Now the words that Rav Nanas used, I can't imagine is the word that the Rebbe Shab used, Hebrew Rav Nanas. He said, they asked the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, Zeha boot camp. This is your boot camp. I can't imagine the Rebbe Shab used the word boot camp, because how would he know what Marines are in 1914? Were there Marines in 1914? Well, yeah, probably. No, I don't know. We have to ask the doc. He's not here. But whatever, boot camp. So, this was your basic training. And then why? The Rebbe Shad said something very interesting. This is 1914. He said, strange winds are blowing, and you're going to need a level of self-sacrifice that's beyond anything that's been seen for a long time. And this is your training for that. And Rav Nanas says not one guy that he went to yeshiva with stopped keeping Shabbos under the communists. He said that of the guys he went to yeshiva with, 90% of them gave their lives in Stalin's camps. 90% of the guys he went to yeshiva with died in Stalin's camps. Mesiras Nefesh. He was in camps for 20 years. He doesn't call it Mesiras Nefesh because he got out alive. He was a Mesiras Nefesh. Spent 20 years in Stalin's camp and was never Mechal Shabbos. Right? Put non-kosher food in his mouth once, right? Because captured after the war. I don't say captured after the war. when the during the war, when the Russians captured Poland, so they gave the Poles the offer either to go into the camps or to join the army. So a lot of Hasidim figured they were better off in the camps than they were in the army, but that's an interesting question. So he told them they could, and they didn't believe him, so he put some in his mouth. It's the only time he put the non-kosher soup in his mouth, so they could eat. They would eat it, wouldn't die. Because they could eat it, out of the halacha, they could eat it if they wouldn't have to die. So I don't think he swallowed it, but he put it in his mouth.
Was there time for dinner?
Yeah, but I'm not sure. I guess that hour, you would get something, but they'd have an hour and a half to go to the because the yeshiva didn't have food in those days. The yeshiva, they had what was called teg, which means days in Yiddish. Teg is days. And you would eat different days at different families. The families there's an incredible, the Hagdama written by the Frierdiker Rebbe, to Kuntres Eitz Chaim, even if you don't finish the whole book at this point, read the Frierdiker Rebbe's Hagdama, he describes the teg. He describes the effect of having Tamimim come into most houses in Lubavitch and the effect that had on the house. That almost every house had one. Someone who was able to do what these guys were doing would come into the house and eat brunch, whatever it was, with the lox and bagels with the cream cheese and whatever they had.
What's the name of the
Kuntres Eitz Chaim, the tree of life. Right? It's translated into English a couple of times. Different people did. But it was. Wait, what time is it up here? Okay. Yeah, I don't see. This doesn't have it on it. Okay. So there, the Rebbe explains, why did I bring that all up? The Rebbe explains how, even though our Ikar Avodah is Yehuda Tata, we still learn Chassidus about levels of Yehuda Ilah, because ultimately we have to appreciate that level exists, and that illuminates our Yehuda Tata. Right? What would we think Yiddishkeit is if we didn't learn about lofty, godly concepts? Just a bunch of discipline. It's all Yehuda Tata. I'm just disciplining myself. What are we ultimately meant to understand? That no, I'm trying to bring transcendent levels of godly reality into my conscious reality. So I have to be aware of those transcendent levels and appreciate the fact that ultimately it's bringing those levels into conscious me, which is, interestingly enough, the advantage of Yehuda Tata over Yehudi Ilah, which is the advantage of the victory of the war over everything else. And that's why the victory of the war is the source of all of this, which we're going to see in the next page. Right? Or there should be the light and revelation of Yehudi Ilah, muchach. Therefore, from that it's proved l'cha'ura at first glance. Okay, we just turned the page and we're in the top line of the footnotes on page Kuf Dalid. Afshal loshen deichek tzas, even though it's hard to see this in the language of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Right, the Rebbe says that, meaning you wouldn't think this if you read the word. Shekavanasei, that the Rebbe's intention, shebekavu anesbad lokas neders, that they established the miracle in the lighting of the candles. When the Rebbe says those words, hu levar, is to explain a diuk shebetchilas hamaimer, the careful reading that's at the beginning of the maimer, ma, that which he said, and we saw this, sheyamei Chanukah, that the days of Chanukah shenikvu gam alanes nitzachon and right? That the miracle that was established also on the victory in the war, which of course we've said at the beginning of the Maimer, that the conceptual underpinning of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimer is that yes, the miracle also, the holiday also relates to the miracle of the war. Maschilim, right? When does that all begin? That all comes into a state of revelation in the day of the miracle of the Neros, which is Chafei, and that's part of the reason why we celebrate Chafei. In other words, the Iker is Yehudi Ilah. Yehuda Tata is there in order to get to a higher level. So then we celebrate Yehudi Ilah. Now we're going to see that inside the Maimer also, right? It's interesting. As is often the case, sometimes when you read a footnote, the footnote tells you information that's actually going to come up later in the Maimer, and it helps you understand what happens later in the Maimer. So go a little further. Remember, it's Rosh Chodesh again today, right? Which means a longer davening. It also means, wash at some point.
Yeah.
Right? Figure out what lunch is before you wash at breakfast if you don't want to wash twice. Right? Now, so the Rebbe says, even though, and now this line that's a very important line, but we can understand based on what we were just talking about. There's a certain advantage on the level of Yehuda Tata on Yehudi law. What's that? Well, we saw it earlier in the Maimer. What did the Rebbe say? It's that the Mesiras Nefesh of the victory of the war was expressed in the most obvious way in their conscious reality, in their what we call keiches agiluyim, the revealed powers of their soul, meaning conscious you and me. Where is it revealed? When is the essence of the soul revealed most powerfully? In conscious you and me? That's Yehuda Tata. My existence in the world as a created being, but using that existence to connect to the Eibishter. Because ultimately, what does the Eibishter want? The Eibishter wants a dwelling place in the lower realms. Really, even though proper Yehuda Torah requires the illumination of Yehudi Ilah, that I have to realize that everything's the Eibishter. But what does the Eibishter want? He wants us to be down in the world and elevate that world. So it's all, the Iker on a certain level is Yehuda Torah. Sheyesh Ma'ila b'Yehuda Torah Yehudi Ilah. V'yesh Leimar, and one could say, the Zeh Masha Neis Nitzachon Melchama, and that's why the miracle of the victory in the war, Hayasiba L'Neis Hashem, was the reason for the miracle of the oil. The Asiba He L'Mayla Mi'Maseviv, as we said earlier, outside, and now we see it inside. That the cause of something is obviously higher place than that which it causes to be there. What's the source of it? The source is the cause. So obviously the cause is coming from a more powerful place than that which it affects. Okay, so that means on a certain level, the victory in the war is the Iker. And that's why it's the source of everything else. Why aren't we celebrating it? The Rebbe still didn't explain that. That's the next line. We'll see that in a second, even though we have footnote 38 to read, but we'll see that tomorrow because I want to stop on time so you can get to davening on time. Right, but let's just see Mikol Makim, Haria Shleimus the Yehuda Tata, the complete and whole expression of Yehuda Tata is only when when the light of Yehudi Ilah shines into the Yehuda Tata. In other words, Mitzad Echad, what do I realize? I'm a created being, and I exist in the world, and I exist to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the world is here to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's Yehuda Tata. Okay. Excellent. I know what it's all about. But ultimately, that of Veata has to be illuminated by an appreciation of the fact that there's a level where the world doesn't have any separate existence. It's all just godly. A supernatural appreciation of the natural reality. That nature doesn't really hide God. Nature is just the Eibishter, right? What's the mashal often used? What's this? Shem Elokim. What's this? Shem Havaya. You want to know what I'm really all about? Look at this part of me. Right? What did Yosef see in the two Sarim in the jail when they walked in? Well, he looked at their hands. What did he look at? Their faces. And what did he know? They're not happy. And he asked them. And all of Jewish history changed. The whole history of the world changed because there was one Jew sitting in prison who saw two unhappy goyim who actually had been torturing him the whole time. They were not nice to him, right? Calling the even after, right? Even after when the Sar Mashkin remembers, what does he refers to him as an Eved, Ivri, Nar. Even after he remembers him, he refers to him in disparaging terms that Rashi makes a point of telling us about. Right? Okay. So these guys were not nice to Yosef in jail. That being said, when Yosef saw that they didn't feel so good, he asked them why not. And because of that question, all of history changed. Imagine if Yosef had looked at the guys, creepy guys. Looks like they're miserable. Good, they should be miserable. And then ask them the question, and that would be the end. Wouldn't hear about dreams or nothing. The whole history, who knows what, obviously it had to be, but who knows what would have been if that hadn't been. Okay, So Yosef here notices their face. What's a face? The word face comes from what word? Panim, the panemius. Well, you want to know what a person's really about? Look at their face. Okay, fine. So what's the panemius? What does the face represent? So what's Shem Elokim? That. So what's nature? Nature is not that. Something hiding God. What's nature? God hiding God. Nature's the image there also. That's Yehudi law. Yehudi law is the appreciation that it's all the image. Havaya hu Elokim. Right? Shem Havaya, transcendent, revealed, godly light, and Shem Elokim, the source of concealment. It's all just the same. Right? To put it in Hasidic terms, what Shem Havaya? The revelation of the power of infinite in God. What's Shem Elokim? The revelation of the power of finite in God, because God's beyond both. Okay, fine. So that without that appreciation, my avodah and the level of Yehuda Tata will be very limited and be completely different. Completely different. It might be about reward and punishment, because I'm very powerfully connected to my own existence, not in an egotistical way, right? But there's me, and there's the necessity of me to serve God and to progress as far as I can in the service of God and to be as holy as I can and as learned as I can be, etc., etc., etc. Okay, because it's about the reality down here. I'm down here right now. Okay. Once there's an appreciation of the fact that the down here is also just Elokus, then it's not about me, it's about the Eibishter. Because on the level of Yehudi law, there's no me either as something separate from the Eibishter. There's a me, but it's just an extension of the Eibishter. Okay, so then what are we revealing down here? What's really here? And what's really here? It's really a dir b'tachtonim. It's really a place of godly revelation. That's Yehudi law. Now, Yehuda Tata, it has to happen down here in the Tachtonim, in the lower realms, right? So I can't get so into Yehudi law that I forget that there's a world. But I can't get so into the world that I forget that there's a God and that the world is the Eibishter. It's not that God's up there and I'm down here and I'm serving him up there. No. Everything around us is Eibishter. It's all him. That's Yehudi law. I remember having a girl in Sem who was on shlichus in America, and the only school where she lived, there was a serious religious community where they were on shlichus, but not a serious Lubavitch community. It was a very serious Litvish community. So she went to Beis Yaakov school, and she once told us that Sem has been a real eye opener for her. But she learned a little Chassidus with her parents, but she didn't really learn Chassidus seriously until she came to Sem. And she said she remembers in grade 12, they took a trip to New York. And the teacher, their grade 12 teacher, was telling them, you have to behave properly. You're going away and you're representing the Kadosh Boruch Hu wherever you go. And Baruch Hashem. And even on the plane, you have to make sure that because kids can get a little rowdy on a plane. It's fun on a plane. No, you have to realize that. And the plane especially, because you're even closer to God on the plane. Because you're 35,000 feet closer, because he's up there and we're down here. I was a grade 12 teacher in the school. Now, are all grade 12 teachers at school like that? I would hope not. I don't think so. I would assume not. Okay, but that's what she didn't know she knew there was something wrong with that. And she went home and asked, is there something wrong with that? Does that make sense, what I just heard? And the parents said, no. Right? But you have to have a little feeling of Yehudi law before you'll not think that God's up there and we're down here. We use those terms all the time. Why? Well, because we relate to up and down, but they're not absolute, those terms, they're only relative. Where's the Eibishter? Here. The question is not does God exist? The question is, does the world exist? There's no question about God's existence. That's true. Does the world exist? Oh, that's an interesting question. On some level, yes. It's called Yehudi Tata. On some level, well, yeah, but it's just Elokus. That's Yehudi law. On another level, no, absolutely not. It's just the Eibishter. We have to stop. Okay? So we just did, though, get the understanding as to why we don't celebrate Chaf Dalet. Because it's all about Chafei. It's all about, even Chaf Dalet is about Chafei. Even Yehuda Tata is all about Yehudi alone. There's no celebration of Yehuda Tata, so to speak. You don't celebrate God in nature. You celebrate God beyond nature. Right? God in nature? Well, what am I celebrating? I'm too busy working. Right? I'm celebrating the victory in the war. How do I know it's not a ceasefire? A cessation of hostilities. How do I know it's not just that? How do I know they're not going to attack me? What exactly am I celebrating? I'll go home. I'm happy I'm home. But did I put my gun away? Not necessarily. The next day, I put my gun away, so to speak. We'll see what I do tomorrow. Hopefully we'll finish the Maimon tomorrow. We have a few days. I think Wednesday's the last day, I think, of this, and then there's a break, and so I think we'll do something short, and then we'll start learning Basi Lagani Tafshin Yud after the break.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.